What I would like to see him do is unite the belts. I think Tony Ferguson is definitely deserving of that title shot against McGregor, and I don't like two belts floating around the division for too long. I think that the interim title is, you know, it's a placeholder for the real title. Really, you shouldn't have that for very long. So it makes sense for McGregor to come back and defend the belt against Tony Ferguson. Obviously, the money fight is Diaz. Everybody wants to see that, including me. But for the integrity of the sport and for McGregor's legacy, he needs to solidify himself as a champion that will defend his belt, which he's not done yet. He's getting a lot of heat for that from the fans, and I think, you know, now he's got a bank account full of cash. He doesn't really need to worry too much about that now. He can focus on the things that he wants to achieve as an athlete, and I think what he wants to do is you know, be the lightweight champion of the UFC and to defend that belt and to prove to people that he is the best lightweight in the world. The first fight, obviously, is Tony Ferguson for that. If he beats Tony Ferguson, it does a lot of the work for him because, you know, Conor's had one fight in the lightweight division. He won the belt in that first fight, and Tony Ferguson's cleared out the division on this ridiculous run of wins. If Conor then steps in and beats Tony Ferguson, he's effectively, you know, nullified every one of those opponents that Tony Ferguson's already beaten. So that only leaves a few more options in the division. Obviously, Khabib is up there as well. You know, it's a fascinating division, and really McGregor's got the pick of what he does, but I feel like the right thing to do is to face Tony Ferguson.
Do you think he'd receive a lot of criticism, and do you think he'd be wrong if he took the Diaz fight over Ferguson?
I don't think he would receive any criticism unless he kept hold of the belt. He can't defend the belt against Nate Diaz because Nate Diaz is not a #1 contender. You know, there are, what, 4 guys above Nate Diaz that are worthy of a title shot ahead of that, and it would really upset the apple cart if, you know, if Diaz did come in and beat McGregor and then he's the champion. Then we've got to reconsider the whole ranking system and who gets the shot next, and it confuses things, and it would validate Nate Diaz as a world-class contender, which at the moment he's not, particularly not being active. I think the only way that McGregor gets around it is if he vacates the belt, you know. Vacate the belt and then take the money fight if that's what you want. But I don't think he's interested in that anymore. He's had the money fight now against Mayweather. I think now what he wants to do is have the legacy fights. And he's had 2 good fights with Diaz, and that trilogy is always there waiting for him, because I can't see Diaz coming back to fight anybody else. But the rest of the division is waiting for McGregor to prove himself as the champion, and I think that's his priority.
And just one more word on him. I mean, he hasn't fought in the UFC for over a year. He's gone into that boxing realm. Is there a concern when you come back to MMA, you might not just be as good as he was? Okay, he's a great striker, but obviously there's different elements to an MMA game.
You know, if I was a contender in that division, if I was Khabib or Tony Ferguson, I'd be thinking he's taken his eye off the prize for a short while. You know, to switch over to boxing, obviously you're working on a skill set that is applicable to mixed martial arts to an extent. But there are a lot of things that he had to change about that training camp. You know, the way he stands, the way he moves, the gloves that he wears, you know, wearing shoes in training. I know it sounds silly, but these things make a big difference in the way that you move. So while the rest of the division's been focused on being, you know, world-class mixed martial artists, Conor has been focused on beating the best boxer on the planet. And, you know, it is an extracurricular activity. It's not focused on mixed martial arts. So how much has he been working on his takedown defense? How much has he been working on his jiu-jitsu? How much has he been working on his kicking game? Because that was something that really set him aside, and a lot of the time set up that left hand. So I would be quite enthusiastic for Conor coming back if I was one of the contenders in that division, because I would feel like I'd put work in that he hadn't, particularly if I'm Tony Ferguson, because I know that, you know, I've proven myself as the best lightweight in the division now while Conor's been away, and I've also been, you know, crafting my mixed martial arts game every day since then. So, you know, does Conor come back, step out of the boxing world and look like the best mixed martial artist on the planet at lightweight? It's a tough question, and I think Tony Ferguson's more willing to ask that than anybody else.